Hey everyone, I'm David Berkowitz. Welcome to another edition of AI Insiders from AI Marketers Guild. Really excited by today's guest. We've got Idil Cakim, who's come from a wealth of experience in research and insights and data and related fields, but has seen a lot from a mix of like agency and research sides and lots of different perspectives, published author. And so Adil, welcome. First of all, great to have you here and getting to learn from you today.
Great. Well, thank you for having me. And David, I think you pronounced my name the best of all times that I have ever been introduced to a crowd.
Wow.
So thank you for, first of all, accepting this topic. It's a bit esoteric, but I think we're going to have fun with it. And I'm looking forward to our discussion at the end. And you'll see, I put in a lot of research tidbits, but the crux of it is coming from a study I did back in February this year called the AI Gap Study, where I asked the question about how people were shifting and using the time that they gained from AI. So we'll get into that. And there's a lot of discussion around productivity in AI. And I was curious basically about leisure in AI. Does everyone know about the Protestant ethic?
I mean, I I know the gist of it, but
I mean, whatever your religious affiliation might be, in the United States, in America, we generally subscribe to this idea that we must work hard,
yeah.
and that the genesis of the idea was that the early populations that came to the colonizers that came to the U.S. were Protestants who believed they would redeem themselves through work. And that's why Americans have a strong work ethic. And that is, we talk a lot about our work. I'm multicultural. I wasn't born and raised here, so I can attest to that. We talk a lot about work. We take pride in our work, and it's the top of conversation. And I just because I wanted to better prepare with a variety of sources for this presentation, I dug a little bit into US Google searches from the past few years. So this is data I gathered from a tool called My Telescope, and it scans Google searches, among other search terms, but this is from Google, from 2021 to 2025. And I looked into searches around productivity, work-life balance, and personal growth, just to compare. And lo and behold, again, productivity was more discussed / searched than concepts related to work-life balance or personal growth. I wasn't surprised. As a former sociology student, I wasn't surprised. Then I was curious about whether AI was associated with productivity, work-life balance, or personal growth. And it was interesting to see, and you can see the spikes around, I guess, COVID era, where people perhaps had more access to even more time spent on computers than usual. AI is very closely associated with productivity, much more so than work-life balance or personal growth-related searches. Again, these are Google searches, but it gives you a sense of the conversations, the zeitgeist, the mindset that's out there. AI means efficiency. AI means productivity. And there are reliable studies out there that show that we do indeed gain time by using generative AI. It may not seem like a lot, but frequent users actually who spend quite a bit of time using Gen AI say it even more. This is a study from the Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis, very large data set. It shows that 34% of daily AI users saved 4+ hours per week. On average, we're saving 2.2 hours per week, and that adds up to more than 5% of our work hours, and that's tangible. And the industries, perhaps to nobody's surprise, who are saving the highest amount of time are those associated with computers, math, information, there the gains are even more significant. And here we can see that if you look at the lower bar here, let me see if I can move my mouse here. These are the workers who are using generative AI every workday. And those guys are much more likely than other groups to save 4+ more or more hours. So it is definitely making a tangible difference in the way we use we use our work time, and we split our time between work and leisure. And I thought it was interesting to see the various different occupations that are, again, most likely to save time: computer, math, management. Education, I thought, was surprising. It's up there. Business and finance made sense. And then health is also coming up there. Personal services, perhaps because of the human touch needed, or the office and administration, much lower. But there's a spectrum, and the trend is global as well. A global survey from Adecco spanning 27 different countries shows that on average, we're saving 1 hour per day globally. And how is that time split? That goes into more creative work. They say better for work-life balance because, outside the United States, some countries value personal life more than, or just as much as work life, or family life comes first. So I think it's interesting to see work-life balance perk up when we're looking at global data, and 26% tout strategic thinking. That's how they're, if they're saving 2 hours, they're spending it on more higher level tasks. It does vary culturally, but here's another global study. This was conducted by researchers in Switzerland very recently. We're looking at data from 300 plus Gen AI users and 83 global managers, director level and above. It suggests that we are not so wise about using our saved time. This study found that, yes, there were time gains akin to the US studies were showing, but the users were wasting sizable chunks of time. Like 36% of managers wasted more than half of their saved time. Majority, 83% of users wasted at least a quarter of it. And what they use it for were more of the same tasks. I thought that was interesting. So it's not like you're shifting things to maybe a different activity or maybe something more strategic that you couldn't spend time on before, but it's more of the same. And this is largely because AI time is not currently governed so closely. If people were to track their time and have instruction to shift their time, an instruction could be that, we're going to work fewer days per week, or we're going to end the workday sooner. Then they would be smarter about allocating their time. That's the hypothesis here. There has been much talk about the 4-day work week. I don't think it's coming to the US anytime soon, because I think it's contingent on the size of the population and the federal government or the national government that might be leading the nation. But there are a lot of ifs there. But experts like the Nobel Prize winner economist Sir Christopher Pissarides also notes that we could increase our well-being generally from work, and we could take off more time for leisure. And we could shift in the future to a 4-day week easily, he says. Greece is gearing up to do this. Iceland has been successful in doing this. So let's see what the human inclination is. Here is the question I asked in my study. If the work week was reduced to 4 days a week, thanks to advances in technology, how would you typically spend your extra free day? And this is going to a nationally representative US sample, adults. The human inclination is to socialize, not to work more. So the leading choice was, I would spend that time more with my friends and family. And then the activities, as you can see here, are split between various media and leisure activities, all suggesting economic growth. Because if you spend time, say, traveling, obviously, or shopping, you're going to generate more revenue for a certain brand out there. Among media, it's interesting to see films and videos pop up, followed by audio, some type of audio, but CTV, the screens win. CTV, TV, video, movies would be ahead of the line of media choices, followed by some audio forms, if we were to redistribute our time. Now, if we collapse those categories, the hierarchy shifts a little bit and things become clearer. 7 in 10 US adults would shift time to media or leisure activity, non-media leisure activity, generating more economic activity if they were given the choice and the time saved by AI. Millennials among our population would be the most likely to add time to media, and they're also highly likely to add time to education. So the hierarchy does vary a little bit by generation. And I wasn't too surprised to see millennials pop up as the lead here, because they constitute the movable middle in other lenses that we look at AI adoption. For instance, they are the ones who are most likely to ask for training. They're the ones who are most likely to think of AI as a way to advance at work, perhaps due to the population size or where they are, in terms of their life cycle, mid-management at work, etc. They are a sizable and movable middle group. Women are more likely to shift time, if they could, for rest and to socialize. And men would shift more time, they say, to work and education. I think women are just tired because they're doing so much. Students, interestingly, wouldn't shift more time to more education or training. They feel like they're doing that enough. Leading choice by far among students would be media, followed by some leisure activity. And this is, multiple activities collapsed into media and leisure, respectively. Socialization is exactly the same as like that one choice they had, spending more time with friends and family. Time out is resting and not doing much or sleeping. So we do need a break. Now, I looked at the same long list of, and I'm sorry, it's a bit of an eye chart, long list of activities people would do if they gained time and could shift time from AI by various types of media consumers. So the way to look at this is these are the US population average, social media users, podcast consumers, either on audio or video, TV viewers, CTV viewers, etc. And I thought it was really interesting to see podcast consumers pop up as the one group that was consistently more likely to tap into these additional activities with the time gained from AI. They're more likely to spur commercial activity. And as a result, they may represent a very niche but valuable group for marketers. Podcast consumers, I have other data that I've looked into, interestingly, were also data forward and prime for AI marketing because they were more likely than any other media consumer group to say that they would share personal information to get customized products and services. So they're very open to communication. They're definitely lean forward type of prosumers. The future, in my opinion, and I would welcome your feedback as we discuss, looks like this. Employees will gain more time as we continue to adopt AI and get better at AI and instilling that into our processes and companies. We'll definitely try to see the efficiency benefits of it more widely, more tangibly. Consumers will free up time thanks to smart devices, vehicles, shopping experiences. So it's not just work. Think of it as a smarter way to purchase something, smarter way to go from A to B, etc. Wherever smart technologies, AI-based technologies exist, we're going to capture those efficiencies. Content, this is where I think it gets interesting for marketers, will still be queen because screen-based media and music pop up as top of the activities when it comes to spending leisure time. So people are still looking for that entertainment. And that means that advertisers will have more chances to connect with their customers, but they will need to be AI savvy when delivering because AI will push even more content and more choices to people. And amongst it all of it, podcast advertising will continue to present unique opportunities to mobilize those curious, lean forward types of audiences. And the implications for media is basically an AI orchestrated time slot. AI is making time, from what I can see based on this data, more contextual than linear. So today, the media buyer is able to place buys into a morning time, a prime time, or a midday. It's very static and very slot based. The systems are, prepared for that. Even if you go with an idea about capturing people in the moment that they feel in such and such mood, it's really hard to weave that creative idea into a media plan. It's not as realistic. But I think as people shift time, consciously, unconsciously, as we gain time and put more of that time to media, we're going to see these measurement systems switch and media buying systems switch to more fluid solutions, placing relevant messages in those high impact micro moments. So the slicing will become more fine and more sophisticated. And the measurement of that media time will evolve beyond time spent. Today, and I have additional data, we can look into it. The race is tight. If a medium gains a few more minutes, they become the preferred source of information. Everybody's grabbing for those minutes and those and people's attention, those eyeballs. As leisure activities, though, gain ground, we'll need to assess the consumer response to experiences, their level of fulfillment. So it will be media plus outside time, leisure time. So we can't just rely on time spent. We will have to rely on questions about the depth of the experience and satisfaction, and those emotional codes. The divide between digital and linear will continue to deepen. Today, there is a sharp divide between traditional media and digital media that's going to keep enhancing, and obviously the favor is towards digital. But within digital, the winners will be those that can personalize and immediately deliver. There's a lot of talk now about mood marketing. Location-based marketing has been popular for a while as an option, but imagine content and advertising being sequenced based on actually people's moods, preferences, the preferences that they're indicating, the information that they're sharing in the moment. And all of that makes attention a premium. It already is, but imagine media minutes being more, but content getting sliced up even more, attention being spread over much more content. So from a brand perspective, we will need to be highly relevant to earn that attention and to earn the trust of the consumer. With that, I want to thank you and open it up for conversation. Maybe I'll go back here.
Thank you. Well, I'll start with one that came up from Aileen. I'll welcome folks on and share your own questions as you want to come on camera, or at least voice. But Aileen asked an especially good one, and I was wondering about this too, in terms of what do you think it's projecting versus really happening? Like when can we see some hard data, right? Like the number of times I've said I'm going to sleep better, and 40% of people saying they're going to get better sleep and we're all going to be functioning so much better. Like I like how some of it's honest, like, we're going to be watching a lot more Netflix. But some of this is also, are we a little too optimistic here? And then there's also that paradox, like the work expense to fill the time, and you see, Jevons paradox, if I'm pronouncing that right. That's like how, we expected like new technological inventions to go and save so much time and energy. And like, we haven't actually done so, right? Like a factory day is still a factory day, like,
Yeah.
So
I those are all valid questions, and that's what I'm hoping to continue to research. I looked high and low. I even went to friends who have implemented AI programs across large technology companies, and they said they haven't looked into this. Everybody's eyes are on productivity ROI measures. But I do think if the question I have is like, when do you notice it as an end user? that you are actually able to shift time when that AI time is palatable. Like all of a sudden it's 3 p.m. and you're done with all the work that you would have normally continued until 7, 8 p.m. And then I think it largely, back to that Lausanne study, it largely depends on having structure, either imposed by yourself or for tracking or the company allowing you to do so. There is data and there's qualitative complaints all over from software industry saying that they're now doing even more work because their savings are really trackable and their work has changed and shifted. So now they're being given even more work and it's becoming overwhelming. So I think the question is, in the next 12 to 18 months in the United States, are we going to see more gains? Maybe another hour. We're not going to go to a 4-day week, but I just wanted to show the inclination is, even though we're all, when asked and prompted, say, I do more work, I'm proud of my work, this is how this country operates sociologically. The human inclination is to socialize. If I could leave you with one thing, it's that I would rather be human than spend more time with my machine. If given the choice.
I think one of the elements that's always missing from this is, well, there's more productivity and people will have more time and they will conjure more economic activity, but are they able to spend more money if they don't have it? I mean, that's
the same salary, right? Yeah.
Right. I mean, those are, there are some principles. And then if they're spending time on education, as you said, how are they educating themselves and what is that education?
Right. Those are all really good questions. Are you educating yourself on a new gig, on a new field, maybe an occupation for retirement, which could have
Or working on yourself.
Or working on yourself, right?
Understanding your existence and what that all means and who are you referring to? Are it's actually available through mass media, or do you have to seek it? And are people actually wise enough to look into places that actually inform them?
You just sparked a thought. I mean, we would have to be completely thorough, we would have to think of each one of these fields' evolution with AI. Because this is my personal hypothesis. I didn't even, look into data around this. I don't know if there's data around this, but I think the future of education will be quite different. I have a question mark on, college degrees. I think people will continue to educate themselves fluidly through their lifetime if they're curious enough. I mean, right now you can sign up for training, but it's very modular and very opt-in. But imagine with available coursework and AI professors, ease of access to research, you continuing your studies well beyond a 4-year time frame.
I mean, part of, I think, what you're implying is as if your work was a linear endeavor and you started and then there was ending and then there was all this time. For me personally, as an entrepreneur, what AI does for me is allows me to up the quality of the work or do things that I wasn't able to do before. So to produce maybe better work or more insightful rather than, so is this more productive? Yes, but I don't measure in that time. And to create free time and to work-life balance, that's something personal that I do, but I don't look at that mindset of, okay, AI is now going to give me 3 more extra hours or whatever. And then, work is all part of the movement of your awareness and consciousness.
All true. And I think just building on that, you would have to, so it would be multifactorial. We would have to think of all of these things. There's a good question from Eileen. Am I pronouncing it right?
Aileen, yeah.
Aileen, is there, obviously there's always a gap, especially on survey-based data, between claimed behavior and actual. Is there any actual data versus people projecting that University of Lausanne study was tracked. And that's how they're able to detect whether people are actually using their game time wisely. Sadly, the answer is no. And one of the big takeaways was that, you need a structure, you need a timesheet almost to be able to track that. I could see us doing, experimental studies where you recruit people and you give them, the old school diary methods, maybe a little bit tuned for this AI behavior, track your time, write down what you're doing, and then we could potentially see it more in detail and answer more of these questions.
The other thing I found fascinating, when you shared the breakout by age cohort, the one thing that jumped out was boomers were 66% other.
Yeah.
What do you have any insights? I know other's a big bucket, but do you have any insights to what the drivers of that are?
Drivers, no, but you know what? Let me look into boomers versus across all of those detailed activities and kind of get a sense of where their time is going. Because in general, when you look at the U.S. population's 4%. So it's a big jump. So no, I don't know. And you're right to raise an eyebrow there.
The other question that I have is, how much time are you actually spending learning all these different AI tools? And every day there are new tools that are coming out there. It's not like you just use AI and you're going to save time. You have to learn how to work with it and what makes it actually effective and efficient.
Yeah, learning curve. And let me build on that. Friends who were kind enough to test the presentation with me, both of them said, they're both media professionals. Both of them said, what about AI slop? It's not all that productive. And I looked into that. If anybody wants, by the way, I'd be happy to email this presentation to them. In the appendix, I looked into this. Let me share my notes there. There is a Harvard Business Review published open data science study that showed that 60 to 70% of knowledge workers are encountering work slop. So knowledge worker is, obviously a subset. 40% of these knowledge workers say AI has actually increased their workload because they spend more time weeding through the chaff. So there are, we have to dig deeper into productivity, quality of work, type of company. I'm an entrepreneur also, but I manage my own time. So, I can give myself time around lunchtime or elsewhere. But if I work for, I don't know, Microsoft or Reckitt, would I be allowed to spread time that way or be bombarded with meetings? So I think future of work, future of education, economic patterns, gender divide. There's also a gender divide we're seeing there as well. And then there's other data that supports that women are not using AI or getting trained in AI in the same numbers as men, unfortunately. And there are reasons behind that. All of those fissures we would have to look at.
I think one good study also would be to be specific. So content marketing, how much will AI save you in generating content or repurposing content or creating a new ad or getting ideas? If you have a specific guideline and that revolves around people's activities, then it would be a lot easier to measure savings.
Yeah. And I think it was 2 presentations ago here in this forum. I heard from the speaker that in 12 to 18 months, he was projecting that we were going to see plethora of AI generated content, so much more that the brand wouldn't even surface unless they were conscious of this effort. So I think we're going to swim in content. If I were a company looking at this data, and if I were in charge of workers' time, I would ask them to track it. Time savings, and the way they save time would be one of my KPIs. I just wouldn't look at the output. I would also look at employee satisfaction. I would look at the time savings, and I would ask the good question of how do you shift time?
Well,
what is it?
This has been one of these tricky things because even we did some very cursory research with Marketers Guild at a couple of these studies for members, and time savings was a big deal. One of the challenges that I've seen in talking to various businesses about that is how you quantify that, right? Because like it's not something that you're used to being able to go and factor in as far as like that ROI. It's not it's not quite as clear. And then with that time savings, are you trying them to go and reduce workforce? Or you try like there's that ideal that everyone talks about that's like, okay, a creative director doesn't have to spend as much time with like versioning lots of different kinds of creative, but so that now they could spend more time thinking of the big ideas. Is that really happening, or is that like more the pipe dream that everyone says like people are going to be free to do all their best work and be their best selves at work? And so then is there some kind of pressure to justify with that, that time savings, and like, does that come back to bite the worker if they save too much time? They're able to do like 10 hours worth of work in 2 hours. Like that seems like I don't, if I'm, if I'm if I'm a cog in some big enterprise here, I don't think I want to advertise that I just saved 80% of my day.
Right. And I would agree with that, David. I think that even the idea of trying to save time is the outmoded work output concept. We're thinking 40-hour work weeks to try to save hours and add hours to the day. We just said that attention is the revenue, the KPI that we should be looking at, but we're still trying to measure productivity by time. It would make sense that we should be looking at how we're spending our attention during the workday. Because to your points and multiple points that people pointed out, people's productivities is not necessarily dependent on the time they spend on a project. It's just not anymore, especially in the digital age if you're working in digital media. So I think there needs to be another agreed upon KPI that's, I would say, more closer to attention than it is the time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I get my work done quickly during the day. Why should it matter? Like if I get my outputs done, everything that I need to get done, emails sent, Slack messages responded to, proposals developed, I can work my day in 2 hours if I'm efficient, especially if I use AI. So time is not really a factor I would measure by.
So just to professional by, so it's always going to be a KPI.
That's not true. That's not true. It could be time. You could be charged by the hour. You could be charged by the project. You could be charged on a retainer. Really, at the end of the day, and this was a revolution back in 2007 with the results-oriented work environment, basically pushing should be focused on output and not just time. Are you getting what you agreed upon done to the client, to your teams, to your vendors, etc.?
Mm-hmm. I mean,
just to put a little historical context on this, in his essay by John Maynard Keynes, in his essay "Economic Possibilities for Our Grandchildren," he predicted that because of technological advances, we would only be working about 15 hours per week, or about 3 hours per day. That didn't happen because what companies did is they just took that additional productivity and kept people working 40 hours or more per week. The same thing is going to happen with AI. We're not going to see any kind of uptake in terms of like how it helps us with our work-life balance. Maybe in the beginning, the companies are going to exploit it for their own gains.
Yeah, I would agree as well. And I think it's in historical studies where actually our productivity has increased throughout the development, especially with the internet, obviously. But now we're still working the same amount of hours, in some cases more hours, and we're actually getting paid less per the hours that we're committed to. So this whole pipe dream of work-life balance, it's aspirational to say the least.
What about Gen Z? Let me ask. You're making me think. I would, just looking at this data, knowing my experience, having lived in multiple and worked in multiple countries, I would say U.S. is not going to see a 4-day work week as long until I reach retirement, at least. Unfortunately, there are countries that will lean more into it, where it will make more sense economically. But I also was just thinking that, hey, Gen Z's attitudes towards work and work-life balance is quite different than a millennials or a Gen Xers. So I wonder if Gen Z or Generation Alpha, as they come into the workforce, will prioritize work-life balance more, see it almost as a benefit, and will, lean towards that time.
I think that's gendered. I think that's more gendered than generational. Even in the behavior, if you look at the behavior patterns between men and women on these the apps that they're using on their leisure time, you can tell the difference between the genders just based on what they're using. So I think it's going to be a gendered result. I predict that. That'll be my prediction. So it depends on who you're talking about, not just their age cohort, but also the gender cohort as well. And factor in, of course, their financial status as well.
Mm-hmm. I think it would just be interesting to continue this kind of study and then do a driver analysis like someone else adjusting. What is it behind? Like, is it the money they have, or is it the company structure, or is it, an awareness of time savings? Maybe it's just, even if I'm, using and saving, if I'm not aware, maybe I'm wasting it, I don't know, by going to the bathroom more often or something.
I think there has to be, you have to look at the incentive, right? When you're looking at all of these studies, whether they're self-reported or they're actually measured through like passive tracking or active tracking, like the journal you mentioned, it really depends on the incentive. Like, am I incentivized if I work harder? I'm going to get some kind of result that's going to be beneficial for me, whether higher skills, better job, better role, or, better work experience that I can leverage for other opportunities. I think it really depends. One thing would be interesting to find out what's driving the adoption of AI and what are going to use to replace that.
I mean, one thing I'm thinking, I don't know if it will prevail as such, but ethical AI and convincing people that AI is trustworthy. AI systems were generated ethically and they improve society and not hurt jobs. Changing that narrative will create a big difference. But I don't have, it's future forward.
One of the other things I think will be fascinating to look at, especially as you explore different kinds of breakouts and cuts of the data. You talked about gender differences a bit, and I recall as social media started to get popular, so initially when it was more of like a new technology, it was much more male dominated, right? I mean, you look at some of what we might now even call some of the toxic masculinity of Mark Zuckerberg doing this as a version of Hot or Not in his dorm room. And so, and evolving into something that like required some technological literacy and the latest devices and things like that in order to use. Once social media became a communications mechanism, and people appreciate it as such, and then women started to outpace men and use it even disproportionately because it fit into that much more natural skill set. And so I think like as we look at some of the breakouts, like presumably for the foreseeable future, time savings on things like coding and engineering, like is going to be much more male dominated.
Right.
But as a way to improve the effectiveness of communication, I could actually see a double-edged sword happening. One is that's something that women gravitate toward more. The other is it's something where it's like a little bit of stereotyping here, but more for the sake of a hypothesis that women are less likely to say they even need something like this to help that, like, it's just more intuitive side of things. Like, okay, like why rewrite an email if you already know how to do so and like save that kind of time. It actually takes more time to do something like that you already know how to do so well. And maybe even a little bit of mistrust of like, this is just such like a natural human skill set for me. I'm not going to go and like even necessarily dabble in these kinds of things that I don't want to sound too robotic, where presumably like guys might just care less about and have like less pride of ownership in that. So I could just see this going a lot of different directions, and I'd be so fascinating to see like what kind of paths this goes down, relate to time savings and how we use these tools.
Right. To build on like the gender divide, I caught a theme around privacy and perceptions of privacy. Like women are so much more cognizant of where their data is going and so much more discerning about sharing their data.
Mm-hmm.
And they're much less likely to share personal information to get something customized, even though they're the main shoppers. And society has shifted. I mean, a lot more women are now main breadwinners, meaning more economic power. They're still discerning or they're at that skeptical stage, whereas men are a little bit more relaxed about it, for lack of a better term. There are double-digit percentage differences between men and women as they're adopting AI, and in this particular attitude.
Yeah, I wonder how that also translates practically as well. Like there may be a gap in terms of their perceptions of it or their attitudes gender-wise. But I don't know if you've looked at Lori Krainer's research about it's like $3,000 a year is what it would take you to convince someone to actually read privacy policy. She kind of backed into this synthetic number by sort of figuring out from a UX experience like how much time, how much people's time is worth. That's obviously a thumb in the air, but it would be interesting to see also if the attitudes translate practically into people actually valuing their time differently from taking the time to guard their privacy or enable data use.
I agree with you, Adam. And it goes back to my earlier point, what's the incentive? For example, I'm a very techie person. I literally think in Excel work cells. And when I use AI, I'm bullet point emails, and then I'm having AI tweak the emails to make it sound more human. Ironically, going the opposite direction, because I don't think the way other people communicate, and that's fine. I accept that. But that, for me, that's the convenience. But you really have to think about what is the value of that for any product, for any AI product. What's the incentive/value that a user, whether man or woman or in between, would be getting from using this platform? And if privacy is another value that's a risk for them, it's understandable that anybody would be less enthused about exploring that technology. For me, like you would say, I'm relaxed about it because I can see because the convenience for me is more of a benefit than it is to just have to do it the manual way. So I think again, incentives, looking at the reasons for that, and even like education. Okay, why are they getting educated? Are they trying to get a new job? Are they in school in the process? Are they using it to get the work done faster? Like, there's a reason why behind it, though.
Right.
Yeah. I also wonder with sort of just in the same way social media had this like rigid constriction of a metaphor of how we communicate. Like it changes, we communicate more, maybe, Earl, to your point, more bullet points because of social media. But it certainly removes a lot of nuance and dialogue. I wonder our interaction with customer AI, customer service personas in the workplace. I'm sure lots of HR related things. There'll be this like AI persona in a tech company. It'll be a little more hip, free flowing. In a financial service, like in a large and bulge bracket investment bank, it'll be a very rigid persona. And you mentioned AI ethics before. Like, you could sort of ask super academic questions about, well, is that persona entitled to any ethical treatment, or can we just treat them like absolute shit? If it's a female persona, is there a different assumption of how ethically we, engage David and activate our toxic masculinity towards them? I think that's an interesting question, but I think a very practical one is like, as we start to treat these AI personas differently, like how do we, like metaphorically, does it change the way Adam and David communicate in real life because we're willing to shit all over a customer service AI persona, or we kind of game it a bit, so we start to game our interactions with people more? I don't know. I think there's something really interesting here. I was thinking about it with that AI actress. I don't remember, Holly Tully. And so So like she's going to go get an agent and, obviously she's been created as this like synthetic, sex idol, whatever. But like, this whole business of how people seek out, AI driven relationships. It's Tilly. Thank you, Tilly Norman.
Oh, yeah. Speaking of time, as I was listening to you, I also thought of, will we just get more used to it with time and be okay with like the fallacies of it? And I would agree, yes, as well, because it makes online banking adoption. I had done like many moons ago research on e-commerce when women were not going online and shopping. This was like one of my first like forays as an analyst when I 20 plus years ago. And again, privacy was the barrier that held them back. And today, majority of e-commerce is generated by female shoppers. So as people use things more, they become more accustomed to it. As systems improve, it's easier to trust. So keeping an eye on that shift of, I trust AI systems. Whether you double check the information you get from AI or you just roll with it, whether you expect customer service to be AI driven, whether you prefer that or you prefer another method, looking at that as like, are we getting used to AI? I think that will be another important thread to follow.
Yeah. I mean, considering that a large percentage of younger people get their news from TikTok and Facebook, which is not,
right,
has no veracity whatsoever, I agree that yes, AI will be accepted for whatever it spews at you. And if you look at smartphones, they were taking pictures in restaurants of food. There was like a big stigma against that initially, but now it's fully accepted and everybody does it all the time.
These are all great ideas for future research.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot we want to see. You're getting all the juices flowing here.
Yeah. I mean, speaking of which, I'm happy to, continue the conversations offline and see if anybody wants to partner on a research project.
I'd love to. I have thoughts.
All right.
Yeah,
reach out to us.
And also there are things that Marketers Guild has done, including with groups like the VC firm Georgian, for instance, where we'll welcome our members participating as subjects in the research, and so can just be and add a research partner that way, and we can get this out to members. Clearly, there's a lot of interest here, and I bet way more folks once they see the recording and see some of this in the Slack will be very interested in diving deeper. So
right, and multiple minds I think is better on a topic like this because
have you tried synthetic audiences?
I looked into it and I was very skeptical, and now I'm pro synthetic data, and because of this, it depends on the use case. If I were launching a product, I would use it to cut down on waste and to increase my precision. The idea of running hundreds of scenarios, at low cost to see if something is likely to work out or not, and then taking the time and doing the due diligence to maybe test it with real humans is very compelling. If I were developing a product, yes. Would I swap marketing information, marketing insight, people's opinions with synthetic, from real interviews to real people interviews to synthetic interviews? No.
Yeah, I've been playing, actually, I followed Earl's recommendation. I'm working with Ask Rally. It's a really great platform. And one of the things that I found, also understanding a little bit about humanities and how people respond, it's a great way to understand how certain types of groups may respond to questions, which can then inform you in your research. It's not a replacement for humans, but it's a great measure of what people and how they may respond, very much dependent on how you create your personas. I mean, that's very telling. That's important. Your profiles and your personas, but it can be a very valuable tool in conducting research or having
pressure testing some of these hypotheses. Maybe as the ones we came up with here. I'll do that as a.
I'm gonna do I created a AI Marketers Guild audience, and I'm gonna run this session by that and ask some questions and share that on LinkedIn.
That'll be interesting. Yeah.
Glad we can our virtual selves can be guinea pigs here.
Yeah.
I think we're tracking.
What I found, and that's what AI does, understanding how it works. Basically, people in this group, usually when they talk about AI, they talk about transparency and subjects like that. And when you then ask that audience questions, those are the types of responses that are going to come out. So people with those types of concerns, when you want to market to them, how do you have to use a language in order to get their attention? And that's what synthetic audiences can deliver for you.
I would say it's very similar to user research that we've done manually and probably more costly, or market research that we do. I think that now we can use, again, depending on your level of trust, you can use AI tools as proxies to get the information that you normally take a long time, more money, and more people that usually don't have the time to participate in those studies in the first place. So I think, it's a give and take. Caveat aside, knowing that some of this is AI generated, and we're using these assumptions to test the assumptions. So I think really, if we're talking about audience development and user research, we just need to be mindful and transparent, one of her words, like Zakara, about how we're using the AI, the generated AI content that we are creating internally in our brands and then externally with our customers.
Here's Krishnamurti reminds us that all thought is a reaction to memory.
No.
Thought is a reaction to memory.
This is getting deep here,
so in that sense, when you use synthetic audiences, you can actually get very good data out of it.
We might have to get like a virtual Proust in our next chat here, and have his avatar here. This is a pretty deep way to end the chat, and makes me hungry for more. But Idil, that's thanks to you and all the research and discussion you started. Let me know after this anything that you want to share with the community, and I'll make sure it goes out as we share the recording and everything else. Again, I think people will be really excited for this. Feel free to share anything in the Slack of ways that you want to make sure to see who to continue the conversation with, and hope this starts a lot of great offshoots of all this and some sidebar conversations ahead. So thank you so much for sharing all this. Thanks everyone for some really, as always, thoughtful participation. Got a great schedule coming up. If anyone is in New York today, we've got a fun first Wednesday during advertising week, and look forward to seeing you next week and beyond. So thanks again, Idil.
You're welcome. Thanks for the opportunity. Take care.